Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's edition of the Rich Urban Show. I'm your host, Rich Urban, coming to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. We're very happy to have Elliot Simon on today. He's running for House of Delegates in the 67th district, currently occupied by John Doyle. So please introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you very much for having me here, Richard. It's a pleasure. I am indeed running in the 67th against John Doyle. He's been in office for a very, very long time. And I really do think it'd be time for a change. I ran against him 10 years ago, unsuccessfully, I might add. And I really think that times are a bit different these days. Been in my house here for 19 years. And I've been involved in the community quite a bit. I'm retired. I was in the transportation business and did logistics consulting and IT consulting. And now I'm so busy, I don't even know how I ever had time for a job.
I know what you mean.
All right, so I serve on the executive committee of the local GOP. I'm on the board of governors of the Eastern Panhandle Business Association, and I'm the chair of the Jefferson County Emergency Services Agency. So keeps me pretty busy. And now I've been appointed by the committee to run against John Doyle, and I'm very excited about it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's an exciting race too. I've talked to Mr. Doyle. I have some passions. So I met him, to chat over some of those. I'm sure we'll be discussing them. Yeah. So what do you think is, the most important issue facing West Virginia right now? How do you feel about that?
Well, it's kind of multi-pronged because I was very excited about the progress that we've made in terms of getting our economy, which has been a perennial loser, for all these years. There was a sea change in the in state politics, 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, in 2014, there was a changeover in both houses, and there was finally an opportunity to actually change things and to redirect policy and to turn our economy around, and it was successful. And West Virginia started to, it was on the rise. It was on, it was on the upswing, and our economy actually in 2017, fastest growing economy in the entire country. And now we've been hit with a bit of a roadblock with this COVID-19 coronavirus. Is really how I refer to it. It's been a problem. So I would like to see how we can get our economy back on track and continue the progress that we were enjoying until then.
Okay. Well, do you think, with the current, say, the mask mandate and social distancing mandate, like for stores and in places of business, has the governor overstepped his bounds? And of course, we had the different decrees like or whatever mandates, stay safer at home, or do you think he's doing a pretty good job?
Well, he's trying to walk a very fine line, and it's a very difficult thing to do. There's some things he's done right, and there's some things he's done wrong. On a matter of general principle, it's never okay, and it's never justified, and it's never, the government just doesn't even have the authority to tell a business that they have to be closed for a reason, that is not, not sure. I mean, this is not a wartime situation. This is, it's a pandemic. And in fact, some people are wondering if it actually fits the definition of a pandemic.
I totally know what you mean. I've been writing on that on my blog too. I saw on your blog, for instance, you were listing the revised death rates, like about 0 for under 20 and so on. So yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so one of the things that he has done recently is that his most recent orders, and it's not so recent, it's actually a couple of months ago, where he said that when social distancing is not feasible, wear a mask. But they also he acknowledged that that's not enforceable. The problem was picking winners and losers at the beginning as to what's an essential business and what is not an essential business. Government should never be doing that. But that said, if you're going to be in a situation where you cannot social distance and you do not trust the environment that you are in, wear the mask. But don't wear it for very long. When you leave and you're outdoors, take the mask off because it's really not that good for you. I mean, it traps all that stuff inside of you, and it's actually not good for your immune system. But if a business says that you should wear the mask while you're in their business, do so. But again, when you get out, I see people jogging and riding bicycles with masks on, and it's kind of,
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So as a delegate, will you rewrite the rules, so to speak? Like right now, correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't any time limit on these emergency powers, and they're defined vaguely in the I guess in the Constitution. Oh well, I guess that's not the Constitution. The how do you say, code, West Virginia code.
Yes.
Would you fix
Yes.
that as a delegate, like make a 30-day limit so the legislature will come back? And also I'll just add one other thing before I turn it over, is that I'm kind of like baffled, or not maybe baffled, like why hasn't the legislature come back? Are they afraid to go against Mr. Justice because they're mostly Republicans, or what's going on?
Well, it's funny because when he was elected, he was a Democrat.
Exactly.
he's now a Republican. It's an interesting dynamic in and of itself. But yeah, the legislature is, I think, in the upcoming session, going to address the code that gives the governor the emergency powers. And you're right, it should be for a limited period of time. It should be for, and I think you're saying 30 days. I think that's probably a good period of time. And then after that, it should be up to legislative review. Come in and we'll do a special session. And I think the legislature is going to look at this, in the upcoming session. So you're right.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, that you would be definitely in favor of putting in place those kind of that kind of clear law where it says 30 days, and we'll have to review. The legislature will have to become the session, not like now where they have to get, I think it is, what is it, 3/5 of the legislature or something, but automatically they will come back. Would you say that's right?
Well, it's you never know what the legislature is going to do or going to get done, and it's also it's subject to. I mean, the governor could veto a bill that the legislature puts through. But from people that I've talked to, I think that the legislature is clearly concerned. I know there's some that I've spoken to that are concerned, and that nobody should have unlimited power. And that's so that it's got to be
Okay,
addressed.
that's clear. I saw on your blog, the Ghost of Jefferson blog, you were talking about how the rock wool plant came to be, in the sense that about the laws about annexation and so on. Do you want to kind of say anything about along those lines or about that issue? Like,
Sure. In fact, I'm glad you asked, because that's the Hegelian dialectic almost at work. So I create a problem, then you propose the solution. And that's sort of like, wash, rinse, repeat. So that's, I think, one of the things that's at work here. The general philosophy of government interference in local ordinances, laws. Specifically, here it was the zoning, and back in 2001. SB 202 was proposed by then Senator Herb Snyder, supported by John Unger, who's still in the Senate, and also John Doyle, who I'm running against. And what this did was gave municipalities the authority to annex land inside the boundaries of the, actually to expand the boundaries of the municipality. And so it was called annexation without election. And what it allowed was what they called a minor boundary adjustment. And so the visible result of that legislation was that Charlestown annexed along 340. They went out for several miles, and they grabbed a piece of land that the Sheets and the Aldi now are on, the Tractor Supply store, and there's also a subdivision there with some townhouses, and people started getting concerned about the fact that that defeated the county zoning, and the Charlestown zoning took precedence. And unbeknownst to anybody else, while this was going on, Ranson annexed the land that Rockville was on. And so that happened in 2004.
Okay.
So they proposed to do a fix on that. So in 2009, they said, okay, no more of these pipe stem annexations. And there was legislation passed that created an urban boundary, an urban growth boundary around those pipe stems, and gave the municipalities even more power to annex land. And it wasn't a fix. And it wasn't until Senator Rucker introduced legislation in the last session that ended this practice that the problem was solved.
Is this partially a tax grab? I mean, why do the cities want more land? Is it so they can get taxes? Or Charlestown has what, a 1% extra tax on sales, and also I guess all the property tax? Or what's the motivation behind it, do you think?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why any government is going to try and annex land and grow bigger. You're growing your town, and by growing your town, you're growing the authority of the government, yes, and you are increasing your tax base. So there's a lot of reasons for it. And it's an interesting thing is that there's been an ongoing battle between the Municipal League and the County Commission Association across the state of West Virginia. And so there's sort of like this natural rivalry between the two levels of government, because I think that people on the left like cities and they like urban settings, because generally you'll wind up with city councils that are more liberal and more left-leaning. So that's how that I think partially motivates these kinds of bills. So the result is that all of a sudden they throw up their hands and they say, well, how can this happen? How can Rockville come here? Well, it's because of your policies and because of your leanings and your biases. And, the Municipal League is constantly trying to take jurisdiction away from county governments, which, have more rural leaning to them, and to give it to the municipalities.
Okay. All right. All right. On another front, one thing that I've been working on, actually this was an issue I met with Mr. Doyle about, is the issue of either health, it's called either health freedom and or vaccination choice. Like the fact that, as you know, in our state, you basically have a no school, no vaccine, got that backwards. No vaccine, no school policy, and no exemptions, except extremely hard to get medical exemptions. So the question is, would you support allowing parents to have religious and conscientious exemptions to have their own choice about whether their children or in work situations even themselves would get vaccines?
You know, it's interesting, Richard. There's on the left, they're always talking about my body, my choice. Well, you own your own body. And I believe, yes, there should be exemptions because, and especially look at what's happening now with this coronavirus. Um, they're rushing to market a vaccine that is not going to go through the normal testing process. And one of the,
Yeah, I could give a
you
story about
know,
that one, so-called normal, which isn't very normal. But go ahead, continue.
yeah, no, that's a big concern to a lot of people. And you know, if you're going to be injecting chemicals into your body, you really need to know that they are going to be safe. And frankly, since 1986, which is when the legislation was signed into law by then Ronald Reagan,
Exactly.
the pharmaceutical companies aren't subject to the same liability laws that other companies and other industries are. And we really do need to look at that as well.
Yeah, well, your opponent has stated to me clearly, in case he's not on record elsewhere, that he's not for removing any of these mandates for vaccination. So that's a clear difference between you on that point.
Right. I really do think that a person owns their own body. The government does not own your body. And I've also read now that there are studies that show that herd immunity only works when it happens naturally. Like, look
True.
at this coronavirus. Um, Sweden has achieved herd immunity against the virus by essentially doing nothing. And so I think we really do need to kind of look at the way other people and other governments have handled this situation. And sometimes the best thing to do is to do nothing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, yeah, the whole thing. That's part of the reason I was asking about like Governor Justice. I mean, the whole thing with the schools and these different red, yellow, and green zones, and literally, if there's like, okay, it's like a very few cases, 3 cases, or some random number. That might not be the right number, but a very small number. Then there's a schools have to close, or they're going to be on some kind of alert. But I mean, I think it's totally the wrong approach. Like you said, I mean, it's a virus. It's like the flu. Can you imagine? I mean, it's almost like by this logic, we should shut down everything because there's a bad flu season, which there was 2 years ago. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, where is Governor just getting his advice? It's
Well,
wrong, in my
well,
opinion.
well, ponder this. There are some estimates that there could be tens of millions of people that die if the world goes into a global recession.
Right.
And if the response to the coronavirus throws the world into a global recession, then millions of people will die. So it will starve. And there's no, and in fact, because of the lockdowns, there's been a spike in suicide rates, drug abuse, domestic violence. Sometimes we need to look at the fact that sometimes we don't see the unintended consequences of our actions, and so sometimes we should try and think things through a little better.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I was thinking about that, like, well, it's not. I mean, I don't think it should be a Democrat-Republican issue, but it seems like sometimes Democrats use it as a weapon, and then the Republicans sometimes. I don't know. I mean, I've just, like I said, I'm kind of very frustrated about the response in our state to in general, and yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm biased in that regard, so I really think if I it's funny, I'll confess something here to you, Richard. I was a Democrat for most of my life. And it wasn't until about 15 years ago that I realized that that party had left me. And the values that I see coming from the left, you know, the defund the police, and some of the things that are happening on college campuses, and the violence and the riots. I was early, and I'm proud of the fact that I was early about leaving that party. And there's a tremendous walkaway movement happening now because people are just frankly fed up.
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying on that. Yeah, I guess on another issue yet, where do you stand on the issue? Like, when does life begin? You know, what would you say?
Well, I've come around to the view that life begins at conception.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, my focus in my own, personally, you may or may not have noticed, I'm like, our nonprofit deals with like teaching youth to stay absent before marriage, that kind of thing. Been involved with that many years. So a kind of a corollary question, and I know it's not the primary role of government to teach sexual health, but I believe in West Virginia and virtually every state, they do teach like so-called HIV/AIDS prevention, which inevitably means you do have to talk about sexual health, which inevitably means there's got to be some focus for it. So the short question is, would or do you support like teaching that school-age youth should be absent before marriage? Like that's the preferred standard.
Well, mores in terms of you know, how we live our life from a moral standpoint, really that needs to come from the home.
True.
Parents need to teach their kids, you know, the difference between right and wrong. Schools really shouldn't be teaching. I mean, if you're going to teach biology, fine. There should be a certain moral component and an ethics component. And of course, in schools for kids, you know, until a child reaches the age of consent, of course, schools should be promoting and recommending and teaching abstinence until you know, once a child grows up and becomes an adult, then they can make their own decisions.
Right. Okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough on that. Yeah. What are some other points, or there are some other points of your platform, you know, that we haven't touched on? You'd like to emphasize how you differentiate from Mr. Doyle and why the voters should vote for you?
Well, Mr. Doyle is he's kind of a maverick even within his own party. John has said on many occasions that he aligns more with the Mountain Party than he does with the Democrat Party. But that's pretty far left. And yet, at a forum that appeared with him, he said that he does not support the Green New Deal, but he supports the Mountain Party, which supports the Green New Deal. So I get really confused sometimes. Then recently, he was the only legislator to vote against not taxing Social Security benefits. So it passed. Everybody in both houses voted for this legislation, and he didn't. And his response was that he thinks that the state needs the money more than somebody on Social Security. Also, with all of the riots going on around the country, safety of people's safety and their the safety of their homes and their property and their kids and all of that. West Virginia, thank goodness, has something called the Castle Doctrine. And the Castle Doctrine says that you are within your rights to use whatever force is necessary to defend yourself, your family, and your home. And that passed in 2008 in the legislature. It passed 34-0 in the Senate and 97-1 in the House. And of course, John Doyle was the one who voted against it.
Wow.
And at the time he said, you have a duty to retreat. And he cited British common law, which that's, you know, that's for England. And here in the United States, we have different ethos and a different way of looking at things. So those are kind of radical things that I think people don't realize how really, I don't know, out there he is.
Yeah,
I mean, so I think that really what we need is some common sense here in the legislature, and I think I can provide that.
I would agree. I do want to ask you one question that's specific here. I live in Shannondale, and one issue has been there's no only one exit in and out. We have like 4,000 plus people over here. So, question is, as a delegate, would you support? I guess overall, I'm not sure exactly of all the exact processes, but I know that the state funds roads. But would you support funding like for having another exit for Shannondale to the south?
I think your point is very well taken. Shannondale, believe it or not, is the largest subdivision in the state of West Virginia. I think there's upwards of 2,000 homes, and to have only one egress in and out is not it's not prudent. And so I do think that the state should look at that, and we need to figure out a way to make it you know, options to be able to get in and out, because if that one road, if there's a problem with it, then we really do, you know, it's a safety issue. I agree with you.
Okay, yeah, I'm working with Steve Harris on that and other people on that
Oh, good.
issue. Like, yeah, and that's a good, and like Trisha Jackson too. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, you very differentiate, you know, how you're different from Mr. Doyle. In the conclusion, like anything else you'd like to just let the voters know? Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I am really so different from John in that I really do believe that government needs to be streamlined. It needs to be efficient, and it's not always taxes. I mean, the first time I ever met John was at a town hall. It was held at the Byrd Center up in up on the campus of the of Shepherd University, and he said something. He said, this is exactly how he said it. He said, you know, you all have been so good at cutting down on the number of miles that you drive and, you know, saving gasoline, that the revenue to the state of West Virginia has gone down from the gas tax. So as a result, we need to raise the gas tax. And he proposed that the town hall to raise the gas tax a nickel, because people have done what the legislation was actually, I mean, the original, you know, the taxes, Democrats used that to try to, you know, modify behavior in people. And I almost fell out of my chair, and it was an auditorium style chair, so it was hard to fall out of it. But it floored me, because that is exactly how government should not operate.
One of the constituents who would, as you win and will be in your in your area, was telling me just a couple of days ago. He said, "Hey, my wife just registered her Prius, and I was surprised to find out that it costs $155 plus or minus $1 or $2 instead of $53." And basically, my understanding, the employees were saying, "Yeah, the legislature, I'm not sure if it's the legislature or the bureaucrats decide that, maybe you have some insight. They decided that since Priuses don't use as much gas, we'd have to tack on, you know, triple the registration fee." I didn't know about that.
I'm not aware of that. I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to
it is. It's like if you have a Prius, I guess a hybrid, you have to pay like $150 some registration instead of $53. It's exactly the thing you were saying.
Right. So that's one of the problems with government, is that no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, exactly. So that should, I don't know, that sounds like that should be reversed. Right. Well, basically, I mean, I like myself, Marshall Wilson. I'm going to write him in for governor because he's a very constitutional guy and he realizes that power comes from the people, you know? So, yeah, I really like what he's saying. But yeah, it's not like the money belongs to the government and they'll give it back to you or something.
Right. No, it's that's one of the things that people get once they get into government and into the legislature, that it is the taxpayers' money. And really, we need to respect that and to try to get the most out of it, and maybe make sure that, in fact, definitely make sure that people get to keep as much money as they possibly can, because government is, in the end, is a necessary evil.
Okay. So on that note, I think we'll conclude. Thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate that. So I do urge everyone to get out and vote on November 3rd, or you can vote early, but I do recommend voting in person. I am going to vote in person. My wife will. So I am your host, Rich Urban. I'm coming to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Do be blessed, and we'll see you next time.